Welcome to the Karl Marx Advisors Higher Education Discussion Series. Today we will be discussing the revenue challenges that colleges and universities are experiencing as a result of COVID and some opportunities to counter the losses. We are fortunate to have a distinguished panel of business experts that have all worked extensively in the higher education sector. I am joined today by Tom Cunningham, the former Vice President of Finance and Administration at the College of New Rochelle. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
We also have Robin Dorff, who recently served as the Provost for Academic Affairs at Plymouth State University, and prior to that was the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at Kennesaw State University. Before that, he was the Chair of the National Security and Strategy Department at the U.S. Army War College. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Stephen, and it's great to be with all of you.
And finally, we have John Farrell, the former Director of Part-Time MBA Program at LaSalle University and the Assistant Dean for Graduate Programs at Rider University. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here with everyone.
Tom, when you were at the College of New Rochelle, you experienced numerous challenges. What are some of the current issues that higher education institutions are experiencing regarding revenue?
Well, thank you, Steve. In your introduction, you mentioned COVID being a big driver of revenue revenue problems with the college. And I'd say what has happened is COVID has only accelerated the reality that colleges are going to face, because in the next 4 to 5 years, they are calling it the enrollment apocalypse. So the number of students due to demographics are just down, which is going to put more pressure on competition for schools, particularly the smaller and mid-sized schools. In addition to that, these schools over the past several years have been heavily discounting their tuition. The rates that they were charging are just not sustainable. And donations are becoming more and more difficult to come by. So with all of that, and with COVID and what they've had to do to address that, I think the other big issue factors around student services and the student experience, because there's a lot of money that has to go into these schools now to make sure that the students are comfortable, that they have job opportunities, which leads me to think that the other challenge they have is creating new programs that are job specific. And running a brick and mortar school with the online becoming more and more on the business front now, is more and more revenue is needed for the schools.
Great. John, given what Tom just indicated as some of the challenges, what are some of the options that colleges and universities can explore that will increase revenue to counter some of the current shortfalls?
Thank you, Stephen. As Tom mentioned, the move towards online education, towards education on demand, is clearly a trend that needs to be there. I think if we take a step back and we look at universities and the way in which they approach their mission, I would suggest that universities begin to adopt or leverage a growth mindset. Where can we grow? How can we grow? Where can we use this great talent, these innovative resources to deliver our mission? Whether it's new programs at the undergraduate level or new graduate programs, whether it's certificate programs, professional education, executive education, or the possibilities of all those being delivered in an online format, which is relatively new for most institutions. I think this growth mindset begins to look at what is needed in the marketplace, expanding the marketplace itself so you have a greater opportunity to connect with potential students beyond your regional geography. It also provides you a way in which you can provide an education to students on their own terms. So you start to disintermediate the education, and individuals undertake your programs, your opportunities, whether they're online or hybrid, on their own time and in their own way. I think it's important that they begin to take a look at where can we grow. A couple of other areas that are very important, and that is working with, I'll call them third parties or brokers. These are organizations like Guild Education who establish partnerships with corporations to deliver education to their employees. There's a handful of them out there. And many of the schools across the United States are delivering and marketing through these third-party benefits administrators. These partnerships are important. Getting visibility of the program into a major corporation like a Home Depot or Starbucks, it's all done through these new third parties. Again, a new way of marketing, a new way of raising awareness, and also a new way of delivering to an incredibly broad population that heretofore was not available to these institutions.
Yeah, I think
It's all about growth.
Sorry, I thought we all felt that at some point online would grow, and necessity is the mother of invention, I guess I would say, and we clearly have had to figure this out in a very short period of time. It's going to be here for the future. Robin, while the new revenue sources are important, retention is a huge issue that schools face, especially between years 1 and 2. Can you discuss a little bit about that impact on revenue and just the overall operations of schools?
Sure, and I would say not just between years 1 and 2. For many of institutions, it's between semesters 1 and 2, where some of the attrition definitely occurs. The overall point I would make, and what great points our colleagues have made here setting this up, I think it's all framed with having to have a much more business, but strategic business focused on higher education orientation. Business isn't a dirty word in the world, shouldn't be a dirty word in the world of higher education. And I really, really enjoy listening to my colleagues on that. But let's focus on this point. Institutions seeking shorter term realization of increased revenues, they need to focus on retaining the students they have. Retention is the key factor in my view. First of all, you've already got the students there. They're the ones that you can focus on in a very clearly directed manner. You can make, I think to Tom's point, that student experience and so on, both safer and more interesting, and to bring in the flexibility of other forms of delivering the education, I think is a key factor in that. But retaining students that you have already recruited is by far and away the most important variable, the one that will affect things the most. It will grow revenues the fastest. And by the way, you'll be focusing on students that you have already successfully recruited. That brings me to then recruitment today. Again, I think Tom really highlighted it. This is a very difficult environment to successfully recruit in, especially for the somewhat lesser competitive, the smaller institutions. We have an arms race that's already well underway in terms of discounting tuition. We have declining pool of college eligible students, likely to be worse in the next decade, not better. And so the pool of recruited students that is also in that pool, you can recruit more of them, but they're likely also, if you look at the backgrounds and how hard it is to recruit them, they're likely to be the ones that will actually be the ones you'll lose between semesters 1 and 2, which means that your persistent rate goes down and your revenues along with that. It also, recruiting new students requires a heavy use of resources at a time when those resources are very challenged. And I'm including human resources in that as well. But it costs money, it costs people's time and energy when they are already probably over tasked. And the demographic headwinds, we said, really does set up this kind of you're running faster to get further behind, and that's just not a good use of resources today. So all of this, I think, creates additional challenges for administration, faculty, and the staff when they're already taxed. And I would simply add, taking my colleagues' points to bear right now, this would be the time to bring different eyes and views and experience into working closely with leadership on campuses around the country, because it's going to take breaking away from some of our habits and traditions and our ways of doing the business of higher education. And that's going to take people with a different kind of experience and a different set of eyes to put on the challenges and the information that we have today.
Great. John, what are some of the biggest factors you have seen in why students withdraw, and who is responsible to reduce the withdrawal rate?
I think at almost every institution, there are three key drivers of students withdrawing and not continuing their studies. The first one is financial, then there are the academic challenges, and then personal. And they are somewhat interconnected, and maybe they're all connected, depending upon each individual's family situation. I think as you look at universities, the focus on retention, as Robin said, is a great revenue source. Getting those numbers to a high level, whether it's going from freshman fall to freshman spring, or whether it's going from freshman to sophomore year, is key. It's a shared responsibility. It's not one that's with the advisors. It's not one with the RAs. It's not one just with the faculty. It's everybody across the university is responsible for engaging the student and providing the student an environment in which they can be successful. First, to keep in mind, students must have right up front a good understanding, students and their family, how much is this education going to cost? What does it really mean when I'm going to take a look at my 4 years and the debt I may take on and the tuition I'm going to pay? What is the financial situation for me? I need to understand that as a student. And it needs to be explained in very specific and simple terms. The second element is that students need to be engaged in their learning. There's so many great faculty out there who have classroom experiences that just draw the students into the process and environment of learning. I think we've got to invest more and work with our faculty to truly engage the students in their own learning process. Not just in class, but have them engaged beyond the classroom. And then, as Tom said earlier, connecting with other students, whether it's through co-curricular activities, social activities, making sure the students are healthy, making sure they're safe, which is a priority right now, and educating them on becoming better citizens is clearly important. Getting them connected to the institution and to the individuals around them. Many universities have structured approaches to handling students, to making sure that they're focused on their studies, they're focused on their lives, they have an understanding of their financial elements. A lot of institutions surround the freshmen with specific advisors in the freshman year. A good example of where that happens oftentimes is with some of the bigger sports in an institution. There are academic advisors, personal advisors, people, coaches who are just focused on complete success of that individual athlete, that individual team. Those models are very successful when you go beyond sports, and using that kind of holistic integrated model to the student as a person, as an athlete, as a student, as a member of community is a great way to move forward. Consequently, everybody owns the retention of that student, and everyone has an obligation to make sure the students are engaged in the university environment.
Well, that was all very helpful. Clearly, some challenges, but some opportunities for schools in order to expand their revenue streams. I think we are all in agreement that the online experience is here to stay, and it will be an opportunity for some schools to grow. And I do agree with what you brought up regarding the importance of retention and reducing withdrawals. I think a mentorship program is clearly a help for them. And if they don't have to keep going back to try to find a new student and they have them for 4 years, that will be clearly a help. I know we've worked extensively with various colleges over all of our years in helping them address some of these challenging situations. And we're looking forward to working with your schools in the future for anybody who wants to reach out and ask us for some help. We at Karl Marx Advisors have spent a lot of time working on revenue enhancements and also mitigating retention issues and withdrawals. So we'll look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.